With the Cosmic Creation expansion release, we can see Zoe is quite popular, but we're yet to figure out if she'll stay in the meta, or she's just riding the wave of novelty. We can also see some of the older archetypes being given new tools, but not enough to make the cut in the meta. Excluding some of the new cards, which can be counted basically on one hand, the meta is still pretty much the same as it was before the expansion, and it's been like this for quite a while now. On the other hand, some new cards are so powerful, they're preventing many other decks thriving in the current meta. Today we'll look at some of the suggested changes to make the game more balanced. The cards chosen here are for balance as a result of the analysis made by BomberTV in the winning archetypes at Masters, Diamond and Platinum tier, with more than 1,000 matches played, as well as looking at some of the win rate and popularity of specific cards. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on the bell notifications too, so let's dive in. This video has been done in collaboration with BomberTV. I predict the Grand Plaza will be nerfed and its effect will change to activate when a card is played instead of summoned. So what do I mean by this? A card that is summoned through a card effect would basically not gain the buff with this new nerf. Only cards summoned in a traditional way, using mana, obviously in the same way you'd summon any other normal monster without a spell or any effects involved, would gain the effect. So it's a very subtle change, but still a significant one. If you're still a little bit confused, I'll explain it now. Grand Plaza is currently generating 3 different tier 1 archetypes: Lucian Hecarim, Grand Navigator, and Grand Targon, while also slowly finding itself in basically any deck that runs Demacia at all. All those decks have a common theme of summoning effects, exploiting this landmark massively. For example, Haunted Relic summons 3 2/2s instead of 1/1s, basically doubling its effect. The same can be said about Double Trouble and Island Navigator. Changing it to just played would still leave this card very strong, but not being so exploitable by a variety of decks, centering the meta around this card. It would still buff the Demacia cards that thrive on the mid-range combat, and not the cards from other regions that simply summon cards and can immediately gain the Grand Plaza's effect, leading to the card basically being exclusive to the archetypes that you want to see it in, like it was originally intended. I predict Sparklefly will have its health changed from 2 to 1, so this will be a nerf. When this card was released, everyone was freaking out about the power creep to King Cow Lifeblade, and I know that they're in different regions, so this is not the great comparison, but still, let me explain this a little bit more now. As a result of this card being very strong, it's probably the best target for buffs in the game. It can single-handedly win you the game. You can just buff it a couple of times and you can ignore all your opponent's attacks and heal back to full range with its huge lifesteal, and they can't block it because it's elusive. We're now seeing decks like the so-called Butterfly Fiora, or in Zoe decks like Starlit Zoe, and I suspect there's going to be a few more in the future. Changing its health to 1 will make King Cow Lifeblade feel a little bit more fair. Obviously it's got 4 mana opposed to this card's 2 mana. And it would just basically make it a little bit easier to remove. Remember that this card only has 2 mana and it needs to be more in line with other 2 mana cards in terms of value, and at the moment it has just far too much value. I predict that Targon Peak will be readjusted. The cost will be changed from 5 to 7, and the text will be changed from reducing the cost of a random card in the hand to 0 to reducing the cost of the highest cost card in your hand to 0. So this is a strange change. So Targon's Peak is not broken by any means. On the other hand, it's probably actually quite weak, but this is more of a rework for the kind of sake of the design. People have been complaining about this card a lot, as it's a random name generator first of all, RNG, and there's a lot of variants never seen before in this game. In fact, many people were joking that Legends of Runeterra is becoming similar to Hearthstone, which we know is basically a game of dices, lots of chance. With this change, the variants are drastically reduced or even completely removed if you build your deck in a specific way. To compensate for the newfound consistency, the cost of the card is increased so that this devastating effect can come down on the board later in the game. This is a reworked cost, and it could even be 6 or 7 mana, but me and Bomber decided to go with 7 just to be on the safer side. I feel some more playtesting and statistical evidence would be needed to kind of see if this was the kind of way to go and which mana cost would be more appropriate. I predict Zap Sprayfin's cost will be nerfed from 4 to 5, so an increase in 1 mana. The ability to draw specific cards is always quite desirable, and it should come at a cost. Zap Sprayfin is simply too much value for its cost. You're getting a 2/2 elusive card, obviously worth 2 mana, and the ability to draw a card worth more than 2 mana, and obviously with its attune, a spell worth another 1 mana. So if you sum this up, it means you get basically more than 5 mana's worth of value, and you have to take into account that more things like it does the same card, the less other cards you need to draw for all those effects. So basically you're not having to get loads of cards to get these bits and bobs. It just basically also means that there should be a bit of a tax for this amount of value, and which is why I think there should be an increase in the mana cost. With all that said, 5 mana would still be great value, but it'll be a little bit more fairer. This is a particular problem, as we said, as it's very desirable 1 mana spells, and I'm of course talking about spells such as Go Hard, obviously attune directly giving that 1 extra mana, where some decks like this have popped up. We are still debating if we should nerf the core of the problem, but since Zap has always been part of it, and also part of very strong strategies in the past as well, like Pirate Burn, we decided this first nerf of the auxiliary tool would be a very kind of good starting point. So it'd be interesting to see what the impact of this would be if it was to happen. I think House Spider will be nerfed, and his stats will be changed from 2/2 to 2/1, so a nerf to his health by 1. Currently House Spider is being run in Spider Burn decks, as well as many variations of Ezreal Draven, Ezreal Swain, Elise Aggro, and Discard Aggro. It's basically way too flexible. As a natural Spider synergy card, it's also a wide summoner, both valuable in control decks to jump block, and put on early presence on the board to complete against aggro. On top of this, it's also a valuable option in aggro strategies, which like to go wide, like Discard Aggro. It also offers a way to trade 2 for 1, and in the 1/1 trading with their 1-drop, whilst the 2/2 trading with the 2-drop. Overall, this change would preserve most aspects of the card, but also make the unit a little bit more punchable by pings and AoEs, like Make It Rain and Unspeakable Horror. So this would tone down, I guess, what is not such an interesting card, by taking away the 2-drop slot and preventing much more interesting units and strategies see play on the 2 mana slot area. Even with this change, it would still be a great unit for wide dedicated strategies, or of course, spider themed decks. I predict Captain Aaron will be nerfed, and his ability would change from generating 3 decimates to just 2. Captain Farron is currently way too strong at finishing. Aggro decks use it like a bomb to finish off the game with an insane amount of reach. You just need to deal 8 damage in the early turns, and you've already won the game if you manage to reach turn 8 by using the decimates this card generates. Against control decks by that turn, they would accomplish this to stabilise and start to turn back the game, which obviously is impossible given that Burn does not take into account board state, and it's only actually countered by heal, which not all decks run, and it does not seem to be that effective either at kind of countering this. Against aggro decks, it's even harder, as you still need to gather enough mana to cast all the burn, but still, in a mirror it'd even be harder to get them down to 8 health, and then stall it out and close the game with Captain Farron, whilst this is much easier to reduce them to 12, like it currently is. Remember, it's already an 8/8 card with Overwhelm, which also draws you 3 cards which are good enough to basically be in your main deck by themselves. So this proposed nerf will tone down Pirate Aggro, Ezreal Draven, and Burn in general. And there we go guys, what do you think to these predictions? You'll notice a few from our last videos here. The truth is, these cards still need an adjustment, so we felt we'd include them on our list to remind you of the areas that we feel Riot need to address the most. You'll also notice that there's no buffs on this list. With the new meta still determining which decks are truly the best, there was no kind of reason to focus on the buffs yet. We need to sort out the problems before we look at addressing the other archetypes, and simply buffing the cards wouldn't solve the underlying issues. So after that, we'll be in a better position to judge where the buffs should be. What cards do you think need buffs and nerfs in patch 1.17? I would love to hear in the comments. Up next is top 10 decks patch 1.17. This is the video series you guys love the most, and we'll be looking at the wide range of decks with the best win rates in the next patch. I hope to see you there. This analysis will be done by BomberTV, a Masters tier player who does gameplays at Masters tier level and deck guides like this one. The link to his YouTube and Twitch channel is in the pinned comment or in the card above. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on bell notifications too. See you next time, guys.